Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Maryann Petri. You can find me, my books, and blogs on dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com, as well as on Amazon. And I have another announcement. Please notify your Attorney General in your state regarding solar panels made by Sonova Generac Systems. If you're having any difficulty with this company, please fill out the complaint form in the state you're in for your Attorney General. I have a brand new guest on. I have the court watcher on, and she has been turning the tables on public servants for the last 21 years officially. And the pen is mightier than the sword, and we cannot enforce warrants or the fire documents, but that won't stop us from issuing them, from what the court watcher tells me. And just a little disclaimer, I'm not an attorney. I can't offer any legal advice. And I don't think there is any good legal advice. And I'm not a physician, and I can't really give you medical advice either. So I welcome you, the court watcher. How did you get into all of this?
Well, I was in the middle of a divorce, and
Mhm.
my best friend was with me in court, and he watched me wipe my ex up one side and back down the other in court using the Constitution. He said, "You've got to share this." I
Mm-hmm.
said, "Well, I'm shy. I don't want to do this." And he started dragging me through radio shows and TV shows. So that's how it got started, is that we started doing radio right off to the bat. So with familyrightsradio.net. Well, they're no longer available, but that's where we started
Well, that's you got to start somewhere, you know? And how long ago was that?
21 years ago.
Wow. Are you
I
finding,
stopped doing it for a little while because my best friend got really sick. He had Parkinson's and epilepsy. He passed in October of 2024. So
I'm sorry to hear that. Hmm. You know, so you've gotten back into this and you've been helping parents navigate through the Constitution. Isn't it odd that we're not even taught this at school at all? Really? I don't even remember being taught anything about the Constitution.
send your kids to Roman schools and they come back Romans. Is that a surprise?
Yeah, really.
Send your kids to stupid school. They go to stupid school. They come back stupid. Is
Mm-hmm.
that a surprise? Absolutely not. See, I did not go to public school. I went to private school.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, hurrah for Mission Christian Academy and Liberty Baptist.
So did they go over the Constitution with you or anything like that?
Yeah, they were kind of crazy about it, actually. They
Really?
said they did the Declaration of Independence in blood, their own blood. It was like, ugh,
Oh,
ugh.
wow. I think I heard that somewhere. I don't know. Well, hey, tell me more. So, like in school, was it all throughout the whole grades that you went and attended that how much of it did they cover? I guess is what I'm trying to ask.
Well, with the programs, they had a lot of stuff that covered the Constitution,
Mhm.
but nothing's at all as in depth as Michael Badnarik constitutional class, Badnirk. Badnarik. I spelled it wrong. Bad, Narik. Badnark constitutional class. Everybody needs that class. Now, me and Michael did not get along on some of the stuff he taught. Like there's no writ of attainder by blood, and him and I did not agree on that.
Mm. Well, there's so much within the Constitution and the amendments. How do
You
you,
know what the amendments are? The amendments to the Bill of the Constitution are actually the first 10. They limit the government from
Mhm.
doing anything to us.
Right? Yeah, but yet. the judges aren't following anything of the Constitution. And it, from what I'm hearing from parents, is that they're making up the law as they go along, and it's just very heartbreaking.
I have a kiss way to deal with it. What's the three things that a public servant, social worker, CPS worker, dog catcher, judge, DA, what's the three things that they're the most afraid of? A warrant,
Mhm.
a bill, and them to be arrested. So they and a fired knock a document. It's fired, warrant, and a bill. Those are the three things they're the most afraid of. I am more than willing to issue those,
Mhm.
and I teach other people how to do it because I've done it lots.
So, how many people have you, do you think you've helped learn all of this over the years?
Tens of thousands of people, if you count doing TV and radio.
Hmm.
According to my producer, we had more than 1 million listeners at one point.
Hmm. Well, but I bet because people are not really aware of their own constitution in this country.
They're deadheaded so that they won't know.
Hmm. I think that's by design,
Absolutely.
which is sad because people should know their rights. And I remember a case long time ago, it was on 60 Minutes, where these two girls did not know their Fourth Amendment rights. And they were in a store, and I guess the clerk thought they stole something. So security or whatever they had for security in that store hauled them into a dressing room and just went through everything. And so their parents ended up suing under this Fourth Amendment search and seizure.
Right.
So there it was there. I just, it's very scary if you don't know. And those girls wouldn't know.
Yeah. We the first thing I do is I train people in a document called Questions. Now, quite a bit of it I stole off the internet back tw 20, 18 years ago.
Hmm.
That explained that a cop is impersonating a bailiff, he's impersonating a judge twice, and he's impersonating a sheriff.
Hmm.
And if people understood exactly how much you can't be part of, you have to be one part of the government, you have to be the legislative, the executive, or the judicial. You can't be some wishy-washy part that does everything.
Hmm.
So when a cop writes a ticket, he's acting like a bailiff. When he hands you that ticket, he's acting like a sheriff.
Hmm.
When he calls you to the courtroom, he's acting like a grand jury. And then he's supposedly the injured party. Well, he's not injured. Where's the injury? Where's the bill for his medical? Right?
Hmm.
There's no injury. So he's done nothing but committed fraud. Well, same thing with CPS workers. When they come into your house and they say, well, there's some um, abuse, and there's only four types of abuse: medical, um, educational, which is what I got in trouble with, and
Hmm.
my kid was freed, um, neglect, and malnutrition. And if there is no proof that the child is underweight,
Hmm.
my kid in the paperwork, the CPS were so stupid. They wrote in there that my 13-year-old read 500 words per minute, and she outread them.
I bet.
And they were trying to claim educational abuse.
Mm.
So it was the funniest thing in the world. So I also had a curtain on my door, my window, that said I was, thank God for my 10-mile by 10-mile pot farm. I asked the judge when we got in there after they kidnapped my kid, I said, is that new math? Because there is no free space in the state of Georgia that is 10 miles by 10 miles. So can you explain to me how a less than a quarter acre plot became 10 miles by 10 miles? He goes, ma'am, we're dismissing the case. We've dismissed the case.
Hmm.
He wanted me out of that courtroom so badly. Thanks, John Connors.
Well, let me ask you this. What do you think of parents that get nabbed with emotional abuse, which I thought CPS couldn't do?
See, they can't do that. They'll try that.
Hmm.
But the thing is, and they'll try, what's the other dirty one that they love? Failing to protect.
Hmm.
Okay. There's no such abuse as that. They make that up. Okay.
Hmm.
And one of the things that happened was the attorney asked me, well, did you fail we're going to charge you with failing to protect. I said, I tried to kill my ex-husband and they put him in uh, protective custody. That makes you guys the ones who failed to protect.
Hmm.
That makes you guilty because you protected the guy who was guilty of child molestation.
Hmm. Oh.
So the thing is that apparently they've eliminated some of the prerequisites for uh, abuse now. It's down to three, and I did not do the research night before when I saw that come in that they had reduced it so that they couldn't do the um, emotional thing where you're not taking the kid into psychology and all that other crap
Hmm.
us parents can't afford. We're barely getting by, let alone having to do extra stuff that takes food from the kids.
Hmm.
And they don't provide reasonable efforts.
No.
And with reasonable efforts, their failure to provide reasonable efforts is grounds to have them arrested,
Hmm.
as is coming into your house without a real warrant. And no, a signed document by a judge is not a real warrant.
Hmm.
A jury has to issue a real warrant. That's the law.
Hmm.
It has to be supported by oath or affirmation, which the anonymous tips are not. There has to be an injured party. There has to be a medical bill or damages to the property. So if there is no damage to the child that required hospitalization, or somebody ran over their toys,
Hmm.
there's nothing CPS can do anymore. There never was.
Then there's a problem of parents that say, "Oh, well, let him in." Yeah, I mean, look, they can look at our fridge and see there's food in there, and there's nothing wrong. But then they just take over.
CPS,
Yeah,
yeah, and then CPS commits perjury,
right.
says that, yeah, I was making homemade bread when they came into my house and they were like, oh, it stinks in here. It's like, well,
Uh,
bread stinks like bread.
mm-hmm.
And I'm just letting the dough rise for the second time. I'd pounded it down the first time, and let it rest. And now I was letting it come up so I could pound it down again and
Mm-hmm.
then put it in the oven. Well, I just pounded it down again and was getting ready to put it in the oven, but you have to let it rise,
Mm-hmm.
right? And,
Mm-hmm.
and they were like, oh, it stinks in here. It smells like
Oh,
beer. It's like,
oh my
that is
God.
homemade bread. And just wait till that thing comes out of the oven. Everybody in the neighborhood is going to be, oh, that's the most wonderful smell in the world.
Isn't it? Yes. Yes. But these people aren't educated. They wouldn't know that.
That's why we put out the flyers. They're called Fired. You're fired. And we have several. One's for CPS workers, one's for judges, one's for clerks that try to keep you from getting your paperwork filed.
Mm.
Aha. And one's for every other public servant, including a dog catcher, sheriffs, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And we have one for the attorneys who try to commit perjury in court and aid and abet in a criminal behavior. And they
Mm-hmm.
can't do that. So we shut down the court basically.
Hmm.
We fire the whole entire mess and we let them scramble. And usually I get kicked out of court all the time. I'm always getting kicked out of court.
Hmm.
They do not want me in that courtroom. I can't imagine why.
Well, the truth hurts.
Yeah. So we teach in the questions document because we teach you what to ask a public servant. Do you even know how to deal with a public servant that comes up to you? Excuse me, where's your warrant supported by oath or affirmation? That's
Hmm.
one of the questions. Do you understand you're committing a 1918?
Hmm.
Do you understand you're committing a 1661, which is land piracy? Oh, we're going to tow your car. All right. Do you know that you're committing a 1661?
Hmm.
Oh, you don't. Let me educate you.
Jeez. There's a
The
lot.
flyers are not for we the people. They're for your public servants. And when the kids were little and we were still doing the radio and TV show, um, we had printed on our own child the fired CPS so that while we were traveling and about, they wouldn't try to nab her.
Mhm. Then what do you do with, for instance, these people that have been through foster care and when they go to have their own kids, CPS won't leave them alone. They just come back to haunt them.
We start posting those stupid "you're fired" CPS all over the house.
Hmm.
And because here's the thing, there's not one public servant that will pass them because it gets to the heart of the matter for each CPS worker or public servant,
Hmm.
um, and stops them in their tracks. I'll send those documents to you in email so you'll have those so
Hmm.
you can hand those out. Now, we do a system that's basically keep it simple for the stupid
Yeah.
because your public servants are not educated. They have no idea what their oath of office is.
Hmm.
They don't understand that their only job and what we pay them to do is to protect and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And that means if they're following unconstitutional, unlawful orders under the Nuremberg defense, they are more guilty than anybody else because they're the ones in your face.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, it's sad, really. Um, you mentioned these clerks at the courthouses that interfere with evidence. What if you can't prove that they have interfered with evidence? It's really.
Okay, we have a precipice to the court clerk
Mhm.
that basically fires her for dereliction of duty. And
Mhm.
what I do is I come in with the fired document printed in pink. Then we call them pink slips.
Mhm.
You're fired. And I come with my fingers on top of the paper that says precipice to the clerk. And I ask her, do you really want me to file this on you? I'll let you take a look at it
Mhm.
before I court stamp it, put your name on it, and fire you. And like the worst case I've ever had was a clerk in San Diego at the United States District Court. And she was like, we're not filing any of this. We're not filing any of this.
Mhm.
And I said, um, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to file this on you. What is your name? And she grabbed the paperwork and she was all huffy and all pissed off at me and angry and threatening me. And it was like, stay cool as a cucumber.
Mhm.
And the guy with me was good speed. And he was black and he was trembling from it.
Mm.
And he was really scared. So I sat down, I'm quietly flipping through the paperwork, finally got his paperwork filed, my paperwork filed. And he was like, I can't believe that happened. But the sheriff sat down with me, and she was in the ugliest suit I've ever seen. And she starts talking about how she's going to bomb the courtroom and how she's going to do this and do that. And I'm like, ma'am, you can't be talking like that.
Mm-mm.
And you need to get away from me.
Mhm.
And so I reported her to the police officer that was in the clerk's office.
Mhm.
And he goes, well, she's sheriff. She was trying to rile you up.
Mm-mm.
She was trying to instigate shit. So that was the worst one that I've ever had to deal with. And she really just turned her tune right around once the judge had started talking to her and said that, yeah, she can enforce this. So I ended up on the elevator with the judge going back downstairs.
Hmm.
And I basically said, yeah, made that clerk do her damn job. Can't wait to face the judge.
Oh.
And I'd talked about, my rights and my constitution and how I'd handed pink slips out to everybody. And he goes, yeah, I'm the judge. I'm the
Interesting.
judge that was assigned to you. And I don't like you, young lady. I went, doesn't matter. Your only job is to what? Defend and protect the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Hmm.
Is this court ordained? It's not. Then you're not legally collecting anything but illegal Social Security. You're embezzling from we the people.
So sad. Eh, And this has been going on for years and years. Now, I had heard that family court was installed by Congress about the year of 1968. Correct me if I'm wrong. It could be 73.
Um, I have a document that says that the courts have been illegal since for 81 years, and that was 10 years ago.
Mm,
I got it in 2015. It's now 2025. So courts have been illegal. These courts have been illegal for 91 years now.
mm,
And um, the only courts they can have is those ordained by Congress. So all of these little family courts, child protective courts, um, divorce courts, ticket courts, they're all illegal because they were never ordained by Congress. There's only two places that were. One of them is in the I think it's Puerto Rico, and the other one's in Hawaii. Those are the only two courts that were ordained by Congress.
mm,
So all these courts, all these tickets are nothing but writs of attainder.
mhm,
And when they're family courts, it's writs of attainder by blood. These are basically pirate ships.
mhm,
And I have little respect for those who owe special duty to the law,
mhm,
who violate the law as a pattern and practice. It's what they do every day.
mhm,
They have to have a grand jury indictment in order to call you forth to answer. No grand jury indictment, no judge can sign a warrant. Only the foreman of the grand jury.
mhm,
When they kidnap your kid, Trezevant versus Tampa and Macias versus Ide. Macias versus Ide, it's $15 million per violator of your constitutional rights. So the bill gets real fast, real big when they bring in 5 to 10 people to kidnap your kid. So
mhm,
you got that. Then for every minute that your child is kidnapped, or if there's multiple kids and you've got multiple that, Trezevant versus Tampa says it's $1,000 per minute for a legal arrest. Anytime they hold you to answer for any questions, one of the questions is, do you understand that Trezevant versus Tampa, it's $1,000 per minute from the moment you pulled me over, not from the moment you talked to me. It's $1,000 per minute. Do you understand? So you never answer authority. You always question it. You ask them if they understand. Do you understand? And you keep repeating that. You also keep repeating, am I free to go?
Mm-hmm.
Because the easiest way to deal with them is not deal with them. Don't get into court if you don't have to,
Mm-hmm.
because then you're dealing with a bunch of corrupt a-holes. In
Mm-hmm.
Greylord versus in the Greylord case, FBI, you can look it up.
So it's
You look it up on the FBI site. They'll talk about the fact that the courts were aiding and abetting from lower courts all the way through,
mm-hmm.
and there was over 2,000 judges and clerks and everything fired for that case,
Mm-hmm.
and attorneys. I used to have the numbers for it, but I lost a computer or two in a fire a few years ago.
Mm.
So
Yeah, a lot of people don't know about Operation Greylord.
yeah, and if people understood about Operation Greylord and how corrupt these were, I've tried to report the corruption, like Judge Ayabi in Honolulu, Hawaii. He's using his office to steal people's properties,
Oh.
and I tried to turn Judge Ayabi into the FBI. I was left outside. They have iron bars all around the FBI site. You can't go in. It's not for we the people. And they refused to take the charges against Judge Ayabi in the FBI department. And I think I was hit by an energy weapon because I had a sunburn on one side of my body and I'd been standing in shade the whole time.
Mm.
And the other guy that was with me, Frank, he got really sick.
Mm.
So we think we were hit by an energy weapon. Now, Mr. Frank, he looked like Mr. Clean and he worked on the military base. I think he was a Marine.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was this massive guy and it was like, Mr. Clean's with me.
Yeah. Yeah, I just, who knows what is really going on. Um, you mentioned that one case, something Traverse versus
Trezevant
Trezevant.
versus Tampa. Trezevant versus Tampa. It's in the bill that we always send out because the first thing you want to do is bill these guys. See, the action is you put in your fired documents, you put in your warrants
Mm-hmm.
for the judge, you put in your uh, fly, bill, and the last thing is 30 days after you've done your bill, you want to put in a default for whatever that money is and the rest of blah, blah, blah,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because here's the thing, without that default, all of the other actions aren't going to mean anything. And then once it's defaulted by the court, there's nothing anybody can do to stop it. And even if it's like me, I put out warrants for thousands of judges in the state of California because none of them are holding court with a jury present. And
Mm-hmm.
without that jury present, they're all obstructing justice and, stealing from we the people for their salary. And they get um, enough to support 100 people on Social Security per month. So, and they're getting the same money. It's from the same spot.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're taking money from we the people through taxes, they cannot collect from we the people by fine. It's one or the other. And they're using their offices to make a profit so that they make money. And they can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they're supposed to be impartial, is because they're never supposed to get part of the money that you're being sued for. And even if it's a fine of more than $20, you have the right to trial by jury.
Hmm.
So if it's criminal, then you have the right to trial by jury. And most of the time they charge you like you're a criminal, criminally harming your child. Well,
Hmm.
um, there's proven case law that says removing a child is equivalent to or greater than charging a parent criminally.
Mm.
And it's so devastating to the parents and especially dads.
Mm.
Dads don't survive. Um, Brian, my mate, he was one of the last dads to have died
Mm.
that had their kids removed from them. And I think it's because he was teaching other parents and he was helping them that
Mm.
he survived so long. But every other dad that William Wagner from On Second Thought TV
Mm.
helped had passed away.
Mm.
All of his friends, all of his buddies that he'd been participating in helping with, they passed on. Brian is the last one to have passed on.
Mm.
So the action is habeas corpus adjustandum. Jokingly used to call it the habeas corpus adjusty juicy condom. Okay.
Mhm.
So um, it means show me the law that you're holding me by. Show me the warrant of the affidavit of the person who was injured in this case. If there is no injured party, then they have no case. There's no jurisdiction. So if you aren't in jail and your kids aren't taken, you don't need a habeas corpus adjustandum. So then your actions are put a warrant out into your case that's actually open, put a fire document for each one of the type of public servants who have violated your rights, attorneys, judges, CPS, civil servants. Um, and then after the warrant, you want to put that bill in, right?
Mhm.
And then 30 days later, you want to put the default. So you've got four things: habeas corpus if you need it, bill, warrant, flyer, default, right?
Mhm.
Done. You don't want to get complicated because the more complicated you become, the more they're going to jerk you around. So if you try to use UCC or any local codes or statutes or regulations, they have you. You want to stay strictly on the Constitution so that they have to obey by it
Mhm.
because they swear to uphold the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And when they're just following orders, oh,
Mhm.
this is what we've always done, and they don't have a legal leg to stand on,
Mhm.
then we have them.
Right, right. Another aspect that, when your child is taken, then you are forced to pay child support on them when in fact child support is voluntary.
No, it's a writ of attainder by blood, and it's illegal
Hmm.
because if there's no crime, there's no fine, there's no time.
Now, I was just looking at this had popped up on Instagram pursuant to 28 USC 1691. They are guilty of extrinsic fraud, but very few challenged them properly.
That's correct.
Um,
That's why we put out I probably need to do a flyer for writs of attainder. I don't have one of those yet, but I plan to
mhm. Mhm.
because Child Protective Services and your local child support office, they've been operating on federal funds. So every dime you pay into child support, um, they get matching federal funds.
Yeah,
So they're double dipping.
right. The taxpayer doesn't
And
know this goes on.
yeah, and it's guess what? Title 5E Social Security. They're stealing from your Social Security and mine. So's that judge at the tune of 100 people per month. So you've got all these CPS workers. I mean, how many of these stinking politicians and public servants do we support with our tax dollars?
Mm,
There's now at least one in every nine people is a public servant. How can we afford that? How
good
can we
question.
possibly afford that? We can barely afford one in 20 people being on Social Security, not alone politician, public servants that are stealing so much more. That judge gets 100 times
Mm,
what one disabled person gets. One person on Social Security retired. I mean, that's wrong.
mhm,
That is absolutely wrong. They're stealing from us and they don't follow the law and they make up the law and they pretend that oh, we have the right to control our courtroom.
mhm,
Actually, we do. I've gone in there several times and the judges pulled that number and I've gone, it's my courtroom. My tax dollars paid for it. You don't
mhm,
pay taxes, therefore it's not your courtroom. And if you're violating your oath in open court, I'm going to have you arrested. Are you going to violate your oath? If there is no jury here right now, this case is dismissed.
mhm,
Can you get a jury here right now? No, ma'am.
mhm,
Well, then we're here for an impeachment because it's the only case that can be held in hearing. Are you volunteering to be impeached? At that point, they usually have me out the door.
mhm. Right, because going back to the child support thing, parents are dragged through these support contempt hearings. I mean, so much so that it gave me a heart attack because you've got some judges that are just vengeful and they don't know when to quit. And what people don't realize is they're calling a parent a deadbeat parent. But what they don't realize is these judges are imputing that parent at a figure that they never even made. And it's super high. And they also illegally inflate the arrears like my judge did. Judge Elizabeth Kelly inflated my arrears by $3,000. How, how?
Because she committed perjury in court, and therefore she's automatically, once she has committed a crime in that courtroom, her oath is null and void, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because once she commits a crime, especially a high crime like that, better known as a felony,
Mm-hmm.
she she no longer is a judge.
Mm-hmm.
But she didn't realize that eventually we and the people would get smart enough to figure this out,
Yeah.
right? Enforcement of a writ of attainder by blood is criminal. And these judges and these politicians think, oh, we can do it because we've been doing this all of our lifetimes. We
Mm-hmm.
don't know better.
Mm-hmm.
Well, ignorance of the law is no excuse for violating it. You better read your oath.
Yeah. Or maybe they slept through that part in law school. I don't know.
Yeah.
Um, oh, there was something I was going to ask you. So the debtor's prison issue. It's been abolished since 1833, yet they continue to waste taxpayer dollars, not just for child non-support, right? But making a parent pay another parent's attorney fees.
Well, you wouldn't need attorneys if they had a jury present.
Right.
You wouldn't. And none of these attorneys are anything but criminal enterprises.
Mm-hmm.
So the first duty to an attorney is to the court. The second duty to the attorney is to the court. He's there to bend you over that bar, to screw you as hard as he can and make you smile while you did it. He did it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why we have a fired attorney document and one that's called Cutthroat too. And
Mm.
that Cutthroat document basically says if you don't abide by your oath of office, which is of guess what? I will protect and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Hmm.
And their second part is ABA law 1.2 that says that they cannot criminally induce either one of the client into committing an actual crime.
Hmm.
When they induce a uh, writ of attainder by blood, they are actually committing a crime. So it's time we clean the house. Or
Hmm.
as Trump used to say, we're going to clean the swamp.
Hmm.
Well, it's time that people become court watchers and start cleaning the swamp.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I've been a court watcher on Zoom, and I remember, I mean, I have reported judges for bad behavior. One pro se litigant was giving her closing argument, and he just hit the mute button so you could see her talk. And I did, I wrote him up in that state that he was in.
Well, is the judge holding a court without a jury present?
Right. I mean, I couldn't see one as far as that, you get that the screen of just the judge, the attorneys, and they're not showing you the whole courtroom. At least
Right.
I'm not seeing it.
Well, a lot of them will say this hearing date of blah, blah, blah.
Hmm.
It doesn't say the jury date of blah, blah, blah. If it was a jury, it would be that. If you're a court watcher and you see that the judge is holding a hearing without a jury present, he is violating his oath. Because
Hmm.
his oath says that he will defend and protect that Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And the only time that a hearing can be held is for impeachment. So automatically, all you need is one criminal behavior. And the judge is now without oath and he's without jurisdiction. And most people don't know this.
Mm-mm.
And you can sign a warrant anywhere within the uh, anywhere within the Constitution. Or, hang on, I'm sorry, I just got a message, um, and it fried my train of thought.
Hmm.
Um, what happens is all you have to do is witness one crime.
Hmm.
Once that crime's done, as a court watcher, you're done technically, and
Hmm.
all of you are within the jurisdiction of the United States, and that's by Zoom even because we have some parents that are not here in America, but they're here with us on a Zoom. They have the right to sign a warrant for the arrest of the judge.
Hmm.
And if we've got more than 28 signatures, that's a grand jury, technically.
Hmm.
And we have the right to indict this judge. We have no way of enforcing these warrants. We have no way of enforcing the fire documents. And we have no way of enforcing the bill. But as we educate our people on how to do these things, the defaults might actually start becoming reality in money damages for us.
Hmm.
And these guys could end up in jail, could end up doing time for their crimes. Because, no judge has any immunity, but boy, you'd think they did.
Yeah.
And it's so bad that they now have to have security officers make sure you don't even take a fingernail clipper in because you might cut their cuticle with that fingernail clipper. Ooh, dangerous weapon.
Hmm. Or your cell phone.
I haven't had that one, but they made sure that it was off.
Yeah, see, it started with you can bring in your cell phones, but you have to have them turned off. Then, when I was on the witness stand, the opposing attorney wanted my cell phone, and I said no. And the judge said, "Give him your cell phone," just like that. It's like, well, okay, but he couldn't figure out. Like there was no lock on it, but he just scrolled up and down. He didn't even click on anything. So then he handed it back because I think he
Yeah, they were
knew.
checking to see if you were recording. And Anthony Williams in Hawaii, he had these special glasses with recorders on the corners. So he would go into court and he'd get a black and white video of what was happening
Hmm.
because these judges were stealing people's property, like Judge
Hmm.
Ayabe.
Hmm.
And if you don't know your rights, you're going to jail.
Hmm.
And if you do know your rights, it's going to be a fight. One of the things that happened in Hawaii is one of the judges took me aside and said, legally, you're right about all of this,
Hmm.
but we're not going to let you win any of your cases because you are not a bar member. We don't care what the law is. We're going to stop you from doing this. Because I was fighting for people's homes in Hawaii.
Oh.
I got conned into that by accident. I was told I had a job, so I flew to Hawaii, and there was no job. There was
Mm.
no so, but I could help with people's homes
Mm.
and get a place to live that way. So that's what I did.
Mm.
So I traveled all over Hawaii. It was great fun.
Hmm.
But I did learn a lot more than I'd ever like to know about uh, those stupid courts.
Right. Right.
So Anthony Williams is still rotting in the Hawaii court jail because they couldn't go after me, but because he didn't know his rights, he rotted.
Oh.
And since he didn't really help me and he lied to me, I wasn't going to help him.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, I don't know why people can't be upfront with each other.
yeah. Well, that and you know, one thing is, sometimes they're just delusional.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know,
Right.
they've been messed with so much in these court systems that it f's with their ability to think.
Hmm.
And when they hear that we're going to put out a warrant and we're going to put out a bill and we're going to put out flyers and we're going to do this and we're going to do that, they all kind of freak out and go, "Oh, I'm going to be rich. Well,
Hmm.
then I can blah, blah, blah." And no, you're not going to be rich. We can't enforce these things yet.
Hmm.
We, the people, don't have the power we had in 1858.
Hmm.
We are the rightful masters of both courts and Congress, not to overthrow the people who um, uphold the law, but to overthrow those who violate their oath of office. And yes, I bastardized it horribly, but that was Abraham Lincoln in 1858.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, this is a lot to take in. And the problem with a lot of these parents is they're so traumatized. Have you found that people are just so traumatized they can't process it all?
Exactly, they can't, and that's why we re I work with groups. I don't work with private people, which is
Hmm.
why you won't find my email address, my information. Um, because what I do is I teach groups and I
Hmm.
stick with that group until I can go in there and go, so what is the oath of office of the public servant? When they say to uphold the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and then I ask them, what are you supposed to put into the courtroom? Flyer for it, a bill, a warrant, and a default. And you to keep it simple, stupid,
Hmm.
because they're not intelligent when you're dealing with public servants. They've been doing these crimes for so long, they don't even understand they're doing crimes.
Hmm.
They just assume that they have the right to commit crimes because we're special. We're public servants. We're above the law. No, they owe special duty to it. So I only help groups. I teach a whole entire pile of people at one time.
Mm-hmm.
And once they've gotten it, then I move on because then their job is to help others learn. Because the only way you're going to learn is if you teach,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you're not going to learn. And I don't charge, but I also don't do your paperwork. You and your group have to do your paperwork together. It's your duty.
Well, and it's, it's very, I don't want to say like a task oriented for people that are so traumatized. You've got to spoon feed it to them. Do you find that?
Oh, I don't do that.
Mhm.
I put them in the deep end and start doing the questions. Then we
Mhm.
go through the bills. Then we go through the flyers. Then we go through the arrest a judge
Mhm.
document as we're kind of keeping it simple because um, I I put out arrest warrants for everybody that got involved in kidnapping my child,
Mhm.
and I had them on the front door when they showed up. And I had my fired judge ready for when we went into court for not having a jury present. And the first thing I did was, "Do you see a jury here?" And he goes, "No." I went, "Do you understand that your oath of office is to defend and protect the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic? Well, this is family court.
No.
You understand that your oath of office is that you defend and protect the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic." "Well, yes, ma'am, I understand this."
Mhm.
I said, "Well, if you don't have a jury here, then we're here to impeach somebody. Who are we going to impeach?" And I put my hand on my face like, "Oh, maybe, we're
Mhm.
looking for somebody." "Oh, you are the top public official in this office. That means we're impeaching you. Are you ready to be impeached?" The case was dismissed. My kid returned, and I got to cuss out the Child Protective Service workers and the sheriff that got involved,
Mhm.
Brian Childers in Valdosta, Georgia. I got to cuss them out in court, and the judge did not reprimand me. I also got to tell him to control his courtroom dog, his bailiff, and make her sit down and shut up right now, or I would.
Mhm.
And his eyes went just as wide as saucers, and he told her to sit down and shut up like she was told. I was in control of that courtroom, not
Mhm.
him, which was probably the most surprising thing he'd
Mhm.
ever had.
Mhm. Right. I mean, this is like great information, you know. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Know your rights, learn your rights. I don't know of a good class for your uh, 1 through 10 Bill of Rights amendments class, but definitely do the Badnarik class, Michael Badnarik
Mhm.
constitutional class. You can either get it in 48 pieces or you can get it in seven, I believe, and it's about 6.5 hours, 7 hours long.
Mhm.
It is the most education you will ever get in your life. It's amazing. Um, and get with you because you're going to have the documents called questions.
Mhm.
You're going to have the flyers, and you're going to be able to teach people how to use the warrants,
Mhm.
hopefully. Because hopefully you're in one of my other groups where I'm teaching all of this stuff.
Mhm.
If not, we got to get you invited.
Yeah. Well, if anyone wants to reach the court watcher, they can come through me at dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com. And hey, don't jump off. Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these courtrooms. I'm your host, Maryann Petri, and you can find me on Spotify, YouTube. Please like and subscribe. Apple, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google, and other platforms even I don't know about. Again, feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going. I thank you, the Court Watcher. You're just fascinating. Thank you.
You're welcome.